the chair in the absence of the other two.
Oh boy,
I was going to say
this today.
at our pre-PC meeting, I don't want to deprive you of any rights and responsibilities that you have. However, if you would like me to kind of run through the agenda, I'm happy to do that too.
I would, if you don't mind, because I didn't have a chance to prep for that at all.
Fair enough.
Okay.
It was a surprise pop quiz. No, I'm happy to run through that. So let's see. Oops, let me get my screens where I need to be. So it is 3:00. We have David and Sherry. Monica won't be here. I'm just going to go over her application real quick this afternoon. And I think that's everybody. So if we're ready, we'll go ahead and get started and open the pre-PC meeting for March 8th. And this is in advance of our March 11th Planning Commission hearing to discuss the items that are on the agenda. The first items that you'll vote on are, of course, the minutes, as always. And then our first miscellaneous item is the architectural review for Sycamore Ridge, and that is Sherry's project. And I'll turn it over here to her to give you any updates on that since the workshop.
Oh, so not really any updates. Everything is good to go. I believe at the workshop, I think it was Joan maybe, had asked for some type of photo illustration of the product, and the applicant, haven't been able to get back in touch with them so we could get those. But I think the booklet that they provide for the architecturals, I think that they have a pretty good illustration of what it's going to look like. So hopefully that will suffice.
Anyone have any questions on the Sycamore Ridge, Sycamore Spring? I get them all confused. The architecture.
I did not.
No questions. Thank you.
Yeah, questions.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Sherry. Our next item, and then now we're moving on to the regular agenda, is the new business is the fence modification for 324 Heather Ridge Drive, and that was also discussed at our workshop just last month. This was the request to place a fence beyond the front facade of the residential dwelling unit, and as we discussed at the workshop, this is kind of a unique layout in the configuration of the lots and their relationship to a private drive that provides access to them. There were no follow-up items at the workshop. I believe the applicant, who was the fence contractor or representative for the fence contractor, indicated that the property owner would be at the hearing on Monday. So hopefully they'll be in attendance as well to answer any questions. But we are recommending approval without any conditions, and happy to answer any questions on that.
I don't have any questions.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. Moving right along, our next item is the plan for Let's Move Frederick that David presented at a couple past workshops. We're bringing it forward in a more formal capacity at this time to make a recommendation to the mayor and board, as we discussed at the workshop last month. I believe it was last month. The Planning Commission doesn't necessarily have a legislated role in a plan of this nature. It is not a comprehensive plan. It's not a text amendment. It is a policy setting document that will ultimately be used to create regulations and different programs. But the Planning Commission in the charter does not have an express role in making a recommendation, but we do believe it is of the best practices to be able to provide input from this commission to the mayor and board on matters that are so related to the development process and transportation issues and other matters that really are outgrowths of the comprehensive plan. So that is the ask on Monday, to make a recommendation to the mayor and board. Before I turn it over to David, I would encourage you to think as you get ready and prepare. Your recommendation could take a couple forms. It could be recommendation for just we love it, approval. It could be recommendation we don't love it, don't approve. It could be a recommendation to explore certain areas or to modify certain areas. I would think about it as what is the main message you want to convey to the mayor and board in terms of areas where they should focus. So I would encourage you to be as kind of all-encompassing as you can be. If there are things that, we love this, but this area is something we want, re-examined or evaluated. I think that is the most helpful, both to us as staff, but also to the Board of Aldermen in moving forward. So just want to put that out there, and I'll turn it over to David to touch on some of the quick updates that have been made. The document we did send out this afternoon and then updated on the website as well.
Hey
Gabby,
there.
I have one question.
Okay.
Sorry. Can we ask a question, or do we need to wait for David?
If you have a question, this is kind of an informal, we want to just get everybody ready for Monday to the extent we can. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, David, I apologize. Just a quick question, because I feel like I'm losing service, but I just want to be clear that the vote will just encompass whether or not we should be recommending the proposal go to the mayor and board of aldermen, correct? And it could take on several different variations, correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
you will not be approving the plan. It is a recommendation of the board, and your recommendation is what you think they should do with it. If you were in their seat, what should they do? Do we want to support it, or are there areas to modify?
Okay, so the second part of my question is, will everyone be in attendance on Monday? Because I'm just thinking about the previous situation we had where we wanted to make a recommendation, but then we all had to kind of figure out how to sketch something out on the fly right there. Sure. I just want to be clear about the protocol for that for Monday. And maybe this is an offline, but just thought I'd better ask.
That is a great question. So Barb will not be there on Monday. Joan will be there. She's not here today, but she will be there on Monday. So we will be one member short, assuming that Alder McShane will also be there. I would recommend, and I understand that the challenges of trying to negotiate that dialogue, a couple of options. One, the Planning Commission could always have the discussion, ask staff to prepare a draft from that discussion. We could try and capture that. We could vote on it at the April meeting. So if the commission wants to kind of take a straw poll and build consensus in your discussions, but don't want to actually, vote on it until you've seen it kind of written out and had some time to study it, that is something that we could put on the agenda for April. And you could actually just vote on the letter at that time. I don't think that would have any adverse impact on the mayor and board's consideration. David, I don't know if you've talked to anybody about getting it scheduled for a workshop with the mayor and board, but those workshops are several weeks out. So I think we could vote on it in April and not hinder that process any. So that would be an option. I tend to think that sometimes that's the best. If there is such a high degree of uncertainty, I think it puts less pressure than trying to wordsmith up there, and gives everyone a little bit more breathing room to think about what was said and how it's being articulated.
Okay.
I have to point out that all these meetings are April meetings for April.
Well, when April's there, they're all April meetings. All April, all the time. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a good approach. If there, if there are simple things, or if there are concepts that the commission feels comfortable coming to agreement on, right? If you have a discussion and everyone feels comfortable that we should add a whole new section about scooters, right? If that were if everybody thought that was the general consensus, that's probably something that we can draft in a letter and Barb can sign, the chair can sign. But if anyone is not totally comfortable with the language and wants to evaluate it, come back and look at it, if things are more specific in nature than kind of just that general, we want to talk more about the airport, then I would postpone the vote on the letter until April, build consensus, and take the time to write it out.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right, so let me just detail what the changes were that have happened. So basically in draft 7, we have the addition of a very matter-of-fact executive summary that takes about 2 pages. And that goes through sort of the scope and scale of the proposals. We also added a couple sentences of language in the parking policy that outlines some of the possible challenges to removing the minimum parking requirements, and how that giving some guidance essentially to anyone that would want to enact that on what to watch out for. Also, there's a list of sidewalk projects in the appendix, and finally, the pedestrian projects that were included in this, a lot of them have actually been finished, and so there was some modification to the dollar amounts and the number of non-sidewalk pedestrian projects. And that is also still fluid, so it may be more prudent to only include these sidewalk segments, just because that's an active CIP. And that's everything that's been changed.
Wonderful, thank you, David. Any questions on that? Just about the content and things? We'll get into the nitty gritty on Monday. But if there's any questions about the updates or where to find those, help with that.
Well, just a thank you, Gabrielle, for explaining our options, because I was concerned about just having it be a yes or no type of vote. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, this is, this is the good juicy stuff. We deal with such formality sometimes of votes and motions and findings, but this is really the creative opportunities you have to put out there, the concepts that the commission thinks are important. So it's good stuff. Thank you, David.
Of course.
Oops. Well, with that, our last item is the CIP. I emailed some awesome maps that are interesting to look at that Strada and Cherian updated for us. These were maps that were presented maybe a year and a half ago, I think, in the context of the Oxford Monocacy project related to Patrick and East Street, at least, but they've gone ahead and updated them a little bit more. So hopefully kind of provide you with a good overview of kind of major road improvements that are in the works. So I haven't had a huge opportunity to look over them all, but I will before the meeting on Monday. I believe Cherian will be there as well. So we have that update, but otherwise, no updates on the substantive. Oh, I'm sorry. No, there was. I'm not exactly accurate. We did capture a little bit of the conversation in the staff report about future roads. I think it was Commissioner Strawson who brought up that, at some point when we talk about expanding the grid network, that the city may have to be a little more proactive in identifying opportunities for road connections to be made and constructing those, acquiring the properties, things of that nature. So in the body of the staff report, did add on the bottom of page 5 a paragraph reflecting that conversation, and that may also be something that the Planning Commission wants to incorporate into their recommendation. I think, unfortunately, like some of the long range projects, like the the interchange at 26. It may be best in the form of a recommendation to broadly start to consider creating these CIPs, as opposed to a specific, create a CIP for this road connection, because we don't have all of those locations identified, what's most feasible, what's most probable to happen, and there's no no studies of cost and those sorts of things. So if the Planning Commission is interested in exploring that concept further on Monday, I would recommend that you lead in a direction that is kind of more of a generalized recommendation for the board to start evaluating the need for future CIPs for infill infrastructure or something of that nature, as opposed to maybe being able to articulate specific locations and specific improvements. If you have those, that's awesome, and I wouldn't discourage that. But I think from where we've evaluated future planning efforts, there's a lot more work to be done to identify the specific CIPs that will be needed to facilitate those improvements. Sweet.
I want to add to that, actually, that if you are going to be talking about this, one of the items in the comprehensive plans transportation chapter is a streets master plan that would look at it's a flexible concept, but it could either be as detailed as like where all of the future streets ought to be from alleyways on up, to something that looks at the functional classification of our current streets, how traffic moves, and what are some of the broad strokes arterial roads that we might want to build, or have in our comprehensive plan for areas that are within the zones that we could annex.
And in that respect, if that's and I, kind of a guiding thought on Monday, because you're making recommendations on actual CIP projects, it may be best articulated as kind of a spin-off recommendation, that these are our recommendations on the CIP, right, for specific projects, specific things that should be funding and in what order. And because a streets master plan would actually not be funded as a CIP, it would be part of our kind of operating cost to prepare that. That it's kind of a dovetailed recommendation, that out of our CIP discussion came the need to further the efforts of the streets master plan concept discussed in the comprehensive plan. I think that's a great point, David.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand there's a lot that was said here. So in regards to the CIP, when we're looking at all these things that are here, David mentioned the street master plan, which has some of the projects that are for the Let's Move Frederick project. Is that correct? Or am I right in saying that, like, that street master plan will have elements in it that speak to the project, that list that is found on the I think Appendix A? Like, I'm just trying to make sure I'm pulling this all together in my head.
Yeah. So the streets master plan would be a totally separate document, but it would look at the road network as it currently exists, as well as the possible street network outside of the city limits within our development areas. It would therefore incorporate other planning efforts, including the Let's Move projects, but it wouldn't. But that's how it would relate to it, instead of some other kind of a way. So for instance, any other planning projects that deal with roads would also be incorporated into it.
Okay. Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Oh, it was just the unlike a CIP, like a specific project, and I think as we discussed a couple years, Dorothy, ago, you had some concepts about things that should be planning efforts the city should work on, whether it was climate change and equity or different kind of study areas. The roads master plan, instead of being like a CIP project, will be more like a planning effort, study, and evaluation, that wouldn't necessarily be a CIP project at this point. It may turn into CIP projects, right, or certain improvements later. But I think what David's saying, and the discussion you had at workshop was, we need to start evaluating these opportunities, and we need to start figuring out where they're best and where the connections can be made and how our public infrastructure gets extended. So this would be kind of the first step in that process, which then could materialize into future CIPs.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that, I'm sorry, Dorothy, were you finished?
No, not quite yet.
Okay, go ahead.
So some of these projects that we see in the all the way in the back in the appendices would just basically would be almost all encompassing, in the sense that it would apply to some of the road networks, and we would ask for a shared, road, or could extend to a shared path in a development, or it could be almost anything, right? It could fall under almost any CIP project, depending on where it is and stuff. Would that be correct?
I'm not sure what you're asking about, but I think but what I'm hearing is, are the projects in the Let's Move Frederick appendices, are they going to be showing up in various CIPs as we move forward?
Could they show up in it? Yes, that is correct. As I'm looking at different things, talks about West Church Street, East Church Street, East 4th Street, all these different things. So what I'm wondering, will they show up in any in some of these projects?
Yes. So
Okay.
that's one of the cost-saving measures that's contemplated in the financing chapter, essentially bundling these projects together into other CIPs. So a good example of that that's happening right now is the 7th Street Bikeway is being funded through a water CIP.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Ron?
Yeah, it seems like every year I get into this quandary about the one thing that, and it sounds like it should go into this overall study kind of thing that you were talking about, Gabrielle. And the last time I brought it up, which I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before, it's this smart traffic system analysis. And I think the last time I tried to bring it up with CIP, the studying a smart traffic system is obviously not a CIP. It's a study. I was told it was going on, and I'm not sure at what point it actually becomes a CIP, and that would be an all-encompassing City of Frederick smart traffic system kind of thing. Do we know where that study was? Has it made it into a CIP yet? Or do I try to come up with language to ask the mayor and board to move that process along?
David, did we have a grant at some point? We applied for maybe a grant for some AI traffic.
So we applied for a grant to deploy sensor-controlled traffic, sensor and transponder-controlled traffic signaling along 7th Street that would be responsive to all modes of traffic and also ambulances. This was intended as a pilot project through the U.S. Department of energy, and we did not get that grant. Um, in examining the signaling system that we have, we found that it would be extremely expensive and currently is not compatible with the vendor that we use for our traffic signal controls right now. But doing a broader study, as far as I know, is both feasible, and I don't know if we're doing something like that right now, but if so, it would be in the engineering department, not in planning.
And currently I think Zach explained at the workshop in February that our signal system is all camera operated. I believe that
outside of downtown.
Outside of downtown.
Right.
He explained, and he do a better job than I can. But it used to be pressure plates would trigger the changing of signals and such. But now it is reliant on cameras that I understand are watching traffic and able to make determinations about the signal timing and traffic.
Yeah, those are visual light and they're not networked.
Gabrielle, I could have sworn at that meeting when Ron was absent that we talked about Ron's idea. We up, and I thought that under the traffic calming project that we could have incorporate some of that language in that at the bottom of page 4. Is that not correct? Because I remember us having this discussion. Ron wasn't present, but we did bring up his idea because we brought it up before, and I think we all agreed that it was a good idea. I just can't remember where we landed with that. If we were had discussed adding some language to what he mentioned under that section of traffic calming, or if it was something totally different. Do you remember?
I think it would probably be, so the traffic calming is all related to actual specific, road diets or improvements that are in the CIP currently. So I would think of this maybe more along the lines of the streets master plan, maybe not a component of it, because that may be serving a different function, but more along the lines of it's a needed analysis, right? We don't have specific CIP projects because we don't know what the needs are, what's appropriate, or what's practical, or whatever. So if the planning commission wanted to incorporate that into your recommendation, I would probably encourage you to do it more so as like areas of study, because it's not going to be like a CIP either. As David said, we applied for grants and it came out of those funds, or just general operating costs of the work we do every day to do that sort of evaluation. So and then one day you finish the study and you realize, okay, we need to make a $5 million investment in, repaving streets to put the necessary sensors under them, or whatever the actual infrastructure improvement is.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll try to draft up some language to adopt. Is that would be the right way to go here?
Okay.
And because I'm talking about the stuff that it's bidirectional information flow, like the cars are talking to the sensors. I mean that to me is what and you mentioned AI in that. So I'll draft up some language, have it ready for Monday.
Sounds good.
There is a little bit of language in the transportation chapter about CARTA traffic signal interactions that you could look at too.
Is that in the comprehensive plan?
Sorry?
Is that in the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Okay. So the transportation chapter. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you use the acronym CARTA, connected and
connected and autonomous vehicles is
Thank you.
usually the way that
Yes.
it's discussed.
Right. Thank you.
I believe that the chapter is relatively skeptical of that, but that was a few years ago, and that the technology may have advanced such that there are now standards that could be used.
Very good. Thanks, David.
Yep.
Thank you.
That is all we have on our agenda for Monday.
Aw.
I know we can find more stuff if you want. We can add. No, that's okay. It'll all in due time. All in due time, right?
You guys are funny.
Anyone have any additional questions?
No, I'm good.
I'm good too.
We may have lost April somewhere along the way. She said her connection was cutting out. But
Yeah.
thank you all so much for your time this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday night for further discussion. With that, we
Good weekend.
are adjourned. Take care, guys.